Sony's got a long and varied history in consumer electronics, producing plenty of hits and misses alike. And while the company's smartphones have yet to find broad international market share, the manufacturer is not giving up on them just yet, this year introducing several new Xperia X series models. Does the best equipped of those, the Xperia X Performance, have what it takes to compete not just with Android heavyweights, but also Apple's flagship iPhone 6s? They're two very different phones, but each with a lot to offer. I'm Stephen Schenk with PhoneArena, bringing you a hands-on comparison of the Sony Xperia X Performance and Apple's iPhone 6s. With as many Android options as there are out there, a good phone needs a strong sense of identity, and with the Xperia X Performance, Sony gives us a phone that gets high points for style. The brushed metal back is plenty attractive, button placement is smart, and even the recessed power button starts feeling like home in no time flat. The front glass panel gracefully curves at its edges, protecting the 5-inch Full HD screen underneath, and while the plastic edge that wraps around the handset isn't quite as premium as these other materials, it admittedly does look quite nice. Of course, Apple's no stranger to putting together an attractive handset either, and while the design of the iPhone 6s was already a familiar one when the phone initially launched, it's still one that's being emulated to this day. Apple's antenna lines may not give the 6s as clean a look as the Xperia X Performance, but the manufacturer makes up for that with an exceptionally solid feeling handset. And while the Sony may look nice, it just doesn't feel nearly as well made as Apple's model. In a world where phablets are king, both these handsets represent comparatively compact phones, and Sony's 5-inch display isn't much larger than Apple's 4.7-inch panel. Both are pretty bright, helping with outdoor readability, but while images on the Xperia X Performance may subjectively look quite nice, our analysis revealed a poorly calibrated screen with some color accuracy issues. Sony's not looking to bring gimmicky new features to Android itself, and the UI on the Xperia X Performance is very much on the lighter side of things. That helps keep navigation intuitive, and while some aspects of the interface weren't quite as smooth as we'd like to see with a Snapdragon 820 processor under the hood, we're not even close to having lag impact upon the user experience. iOS 9 on the iPhone 6s is also doing a lot right, and while some tasks are a little more complicated to perform than they'd be on an Android, tight integration of Apple software and services still makes iOS a powerfully compelling alternative. Both of these smartphones are outfitted with some flagship-level silicon, and benchmark results sure suggest that they're well equipped for the task. Sony goes with 3GB of RAM to Apple's 2GB, and while that's a gigabyte less than some of Sony's high-end Android competition, multitasking on the Xperia X Performance was still quick and painless. Unfortunately, we noticed some heat issues with the Xperia that didn't show up on the iPhone, and just a brief stint of recording video was enough to overheat the handset to the point where it disabled some more advanced filming modes. Out of the box, Apple offers users the option for a lot more onboard flash storage than Sony allows, but the Xperia X Performance has a trump card to play: support for microSD expansion, as well as an easily accessible, no tools required way to swap cards. Both handsets feature modern LTE radios and all the Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and near-field tech you could want. But if we're getting picky about our connectivity options, the iPhone 6s has the undeniable benefit of supporting operation on Verizon and Sprint, options not available for Sony's phone. It's also a little upsetting that an Android phone being released in mid-2016 isn't ready for USB Type-C quite yet. Sony's far from alone in this boat, but just because other manufacturers are dragging their feet doesn't mean we should let Sony off the hook too. Sony really wants to wow you with the Xperia X Performance's camera, but it just can't quite get things together the way it would like to. Ultimately, we're looking at the same 23-megapixel shooter we found on last year's Xperia Z5, and while its output initially looks superior to the iPhone's with bolder colors and extreme contrast, side-by-side comparisons show Apple picking up far more detail, a wider range of tones, and superior exposures. The iPhone 6s also excels when it comes to low light performance. And in terms of video, we still can't get over the fact that Sony elected not to let the Xperia X Performance record in 4K. Considering the overheating issues we ran into with a 1080p, maybe that's for the best, but Sony really should be embarrassed for dropping the ball like this. The iPhone 6s, meanwhile, does 4K without a hitch. When it comes to playing back multimedia, video looks sharp on both phones, but despite the Xperia X Performance's pair of front-firing stereo speakers, the iPhone 6s manages to still sound a lot better, delivering rich, bassy tones that Sony speakers just can't quite reach. And while it's an issue we've noted before, we still can't get over the degree to which the Sony phone's back panel vibrates when music is playing. Although the speakers may not be great for listening at a distance, Sony did eke by Apple's handset during our voice call tests, with its earpiece's output sounding just a smidge cleaner. Apple's a smartphone maker known for squeezing tons of battery life out of seemingly tiny components, and even with a battery that comes in 1000 mAh short of Sony's 2700 mAh battery, the iPhone 6s outlasts the Xperia X Performance by a solid couple of hours. Sony's phone also supports quick charging, but its performance there isn't quite quick enough to offset the benefit of Apple's initially longer-lasting battery. As you can see, the Xperia X Performance makes more than a few missteps that keep it from beating Apple's handset in this competition, but it still puts on a pretty respectable showing. The problem for Sony though is that instead of a respectable phone price, it's asking crazy high-end flagship pricing for the handset. And while the Xperia X Performance is a lot of phone, it's just not $700 worth of phone. Now, Apple's also gotten a fair bit of criticism for its iPhone pricing, but with the iPhone 6s, the handset actually delivers, helping to justify that expense. Sony simply can't say the same, letting the iPhone 6s emerge as the better phone of the two. You can find even more comparisons, reviews, and the latest smartphone news and opinions at PhoneArena.com. I've been Stephen Schenk, thanks for watching.